40.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Heathen Talk episode number 40. Hopefully you didn't catch that, but I had to ask off air. It's embarrassing. Tonight is our Noobtacular episode number 2, and we're going to focus on group dynamics, building groups, joining groups, knowing how to work within a group, and answering your guys' questions. So if you do have questions, we are in the IRC. If you're watching this on YouTube and cannot get the Kiwi IRC to work, head over to Facebook or Reddit and click the updated link. Kiwi is apparently down.
Or you can go to Espernet and then click their web chat as well, esper.net.
You could also do that,
yeah,
which is apparently a thing. I think that's the intro for the show.
Right.
So Lauren, where can people find us?
Well, if you love Heathen Talk, and really, who doesn't? I mean, we even have fans who are not heathen, so hello to our atheist, Christian, and otherwise non-heathen fans. But you want to go to Heathen
Wait,
Talk?
those exist?
Yeah, we have 2 of them. One of them, and I think one of them's related to me, so... But if you love Heathen Talk, first of all, please go over to iTunes or whatever platform you happen to use and give us a review. Now, we prefer it be a good review, but an honest review is okay. Either way, an honest review should be a good review because we're just that awesome. In addition, go over and to heathentalk.com. There you'll find links to our Facebook. You can like us, follow us on YouTube. And we've got our swag section, so you can pick up a Heathen Talk shirt or coffee mug. And I've heard, and I know, and I do have the Black Ladies Heathen Talk shirts coming. We're actually there's gonna be a special sale here at the beginning of next month, and we'll have those. Get a coffee mug, or even click on our Patreon link and be a supporter. Like I said, on the heathentalk.com. Plus, we're also on Twitter at Heathen_talk. We're on Tumblr. We're on Instagram. We are everywhere. You cannot escape us. We are everywhere.
I want to add this. If you follow at Heathen_talk, you'll notice that it's fairly quiet. However, I'm on Twitter, so you can always follow me and ask me questions, and I'm at JoshW75.
If you tweet us, it does go to my phone, so I do actually see it. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I just got done running election for a state office, and plus school, I'm a little brain dead right now. Not going to lie.
I did just get the update, and if y'all can find him, our producer, Usurped Lettuce, is on Twitter. He recently changed his Twitter handle, and I can never find him now, so...
But tomorrow is Thursday, so maybe, or Friday, or if Friday's coming up, I'll maybe have to do a follow Friday.
Well, there you go.
And there you go. You can also follow me. I'm a dork heathen.
So, tonight, like I said, is the Noobcast, and one of the things we've been doing, I think we actually started this right around the time we did our last Noobcast, is getting Patreon donations from our fans. And as everybody knows, our tradition is every week we toast someone who does something wonderful for Heathenry. And tonight it's you guys. It's the people who have donated to us and who have made our show possible and made all the plans we have for the future come into fruition a little more quickly than we anticipated.
Because honestly, what could be more important to the future of Heathenry than supporting this podcast?
Well, I wasn't going to say it, but it's true. So, I'm going to read down the list, and at the end we will toast all of you. But our patrons are Dylan Giddings, Robin Kim's daughter. I have no clue how to pronounce this, but a Virgin, I'm going to say.
Sounds good to me.
Good effort.
Bo Williams, Patrick Carrick. See, these are normal names. I can get this. Shane Harback, Curtis Eckendorf, Brett, who is actually in the IRC right now. Thanks for your donation too. Neff, who I don't think is listening because he's out being an adult. Sam is still on our list, and we always want to appreciate Sam's contributions not only to the show, but also to Heathen Art. So thank you, Sam. Jenna, Lucas, who you guys will remember was a guest on the show, Craig Erickson, James Riley, Matthew Hafner, and that looks like it's it.
That's the list, yeah.
I was about to start reading the chat, so.
We have a donator called Haha.
And I'm on Twitter too. So
And
to
some
you guys,
weird emoji. Weird.
to you guys, thank you very much.
So with all that said, we have a special treat for you tonight. Lauren is drinking alcohol with us again. Tell us what you're drinking tonight.
I have been approved to drink 1 glass a week. So this is 1 glass, right? 1 small glass. Right?
That's a very small glass.
Yes, very small glass. So this is a Ravenswood Old Vine Zinfandel, gifted to me by my kindred brother, and it's quite lovely. Quite enjoying it. For a California wine. And I also do want to answer, Lucas asked us, you're running for office or you're running the election? I ran for office. I actually won because no one opposed me. And so...
It's easy to win when there's no one else running.
Pretty much. I ran, but, I still had to get a majority of the votes, but apparently I did pretty well, so. What you drinking, Thorin?
Me, I'm drinking a Goes. That's without a T, for those of you listening at home, because there was a misunderstanding earlier. From Reuben's. Reuben's is a local brewery to me. They're down in Ballard, one of the Seattle neighborhoods. And they're run by this British expat guy, and if there's one thing I can say about him, he has brewed beer all over the world, drank beer all over the world, and he has learned how to make an excellent beer in whatever category he brews in. And this one is no exception. It's delicious. If you see Reuben's on the shelf, you know that it's probably not going to be the most spectacular thing you've ever drank, but it's going to be a very good example of whatever it is, whatever style it is. Josh?
I don't want to talk about it.
Josh was unfortunately not able to get beer tonight, everybody. And what he's drinking is not the most palatable thing, but at least it's alcoholic.
So, I'm broke, and I'm drinking Coke Zero with some vodka in it. And with some vodka in it, I mean about a third of a glass of vodka.
Damn, Josh, I was going to leave you some dignity intact, but you just threw it all out the window there.
I got to do something about this Coke Zero.
Well, I mean, that's the closest you're going to get to making Coke Zero drinkable, but...
It would have been better if I had rum, but I'm out of rum.
But where has all the rum gone?
Well, I drank it.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Fair. Yeah.
So, let's talk about our subject for tonight. Lauren, this was your baby, so I'm going to let you start it out.
So, one of the questions that I see very frequently, and it's not just on Reddit, it's pretty much everywhere, whether it's, the Troth mailing list or it's any of a million Facebook groups, or pretty much I'll even go back to, like, Yahoo groups like our Meat Hall. Dating myself there. There's always this question, oh my gosh, I live in X. How do I find other heathens? I have to be alone. Well, let me tell you a little story here, folks. I live in Arkansas, and there's a lot of us. In fact, in northwest Arkansas, which is probably one of the, it's where the Duggars live. It's one of the most, I would say, religious areas. Very fundamentalist. There's a giant Jesus statue. It's huge. Kind of looks like it's going to shoot out. Anyway. There is a kindred that's probably one of the largest kindreds in the country with over 30 members. Don't think just because where you live is not where you would expect heathens to be, that there aren't heathens. And I've watched the numbers grow here in Arkansas significantly over the past 10 years. So tonight we're going to talk about networking. How do you find other heathens? What's worked? We're going to talk about what's worked for us, what hasn't. Starting groups, being successful, and then also dealing with things like group dynamics, troublemakers. We're also going to take questions. If you have a question, you can leave it on IRC. You can we're going to go, you can send it to us on Twitter, which I have open, or Facebook as well. And we'll be happy to answer any kind of noob questions that you have. But I kind of want to start out with the talk about, just from the three of us, how we found other heathens, or how what I always believe in if you want to do something successful, find out how successful people do it. And since all three of us are kindred members, I thought maybe that would be a good place to start. So, Thorin, how did you find other heathens when you were a baby heathen?
That's really, really an unfair question for a person who lives where I live. My answer is going to be completely unhelpful to anybody who doesn't live in this area, because this area is absolutely lousy with heathens. We are everywhere here. I could probably stand out on my back porch and shout Odin at the top of my lungs, and somebody within earshot would respond. There's just a lot of them up here. So when it comes down to it, I mean, you just kind of put yourself out here, or out there in this area, and people will find you, and they will talk to you, and you will be at that point where you have to start sorting the good from the bad.
And I think that's another thing we are going to get to. What about you, Josh?
So, when I first started looking for heathens, it was a Google search, really, and I just started trying to find anyone who might know of someone in my area. And I just happened to find a contact for the group I'm in now, and I emailed him and said, hey, I'm interested in attending a get-together. When are you guys meeting up? And it turned out to be their Easter get-together. So I hiked up a mountain and met some heathens. So, I mean, it was just a matter of, again, making the effort to find someone near me. Because I knew where all the online heathen was. I was already a member of things like Also True Lore and, those sorts of groups. But actually looking for someone local to me took work, and that's what it takes.
I got lucky that when I started looking, we had an active trust steward at the time, and he happened to live about 20 minutes away from me, and we ended up meeting up and really developing a great bond, and he knew everybody. And for me, the Google search is important. I still Google search randomly just in case I happen to come across a group of heathens out there that haven't connected with any of the other heathens. I still try to keep an eye out, because you never know. And I will say, we can say what you will about national organizations. The Troth Stewards and the AFA Folk Builders are incredibly good at connecting people in their particular area. They're incredibly good about knowing what's going on and knowing who to talk to. For instance, I know I'm the Troth Steward for Arkansas, and I know who all the leaders of all the groups are around Arkansas. I try to also keep, things close to Arkansas, like Memphis, and just because somebody who's in certain parts of Arkansas, it would make more sense for them to go to Memphis than to Little Rock. But, I mean, there are people who have their finger on the pulse, and sometimes I think finding that person. Also, the people, like our friend Ashley, who runs the Michigan Heathen group. I mean, there are really people out there. You just kind of have to find them, and not just search Google, but Facebook. My personal one that a lot of people don't think about is Yahoo groups, because a lot of groups still have a Yahoo group, and even if their Yahoo group isn't active, there's usually a link to their their Facebook group or whatever, or an email that you can email.
Well, and I think this is one of those things that this is what social media is good at. Whether it's Facebook, Yahoo, wherever you happen to be, you can come to the subreddit and ask a question, and someone will be like, hey, I know someone in that area. And it's just a matter of asking and being like, is there a heathen around wherever you happen to be? And someone will pop up. We're not thin on the ground.
No, I mean I got an email last week from someone who just moved to Arkansas and was heathen and was looking for other heathens, and like 7 different people had sent them to me because of Heathen Talk and this, that, and the other. And you just kind of have to be willing to first step out there and say, hey, I'm looking for people. That's the big thing. And 2, you have to be willing to meet a lot of, let me say this, you're not always going to get lucky and meet great people the first time. Because just like any other group of people, there's people you're going to gel with and people you won't.
Well, not meeting good people is true for anything you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Whether you're trying to meet a group to get together and play a game of pickup basketball, or meet a group of heathens, you're gonna meet shitheads.
Yeah, you are. I've met a few.
And the important thing is to be completely honest with yourself about what you're looking for. And if you get an offer from one of these groups that you don't gel with, and they're like, hey, we like you, we want you to join, you got to be honest with them too. And like,
Right.
This isn't really what I'm looking for.
And I think your first point there was especially important, is to know what it is that you're looking for. Because you're going to meet groups that are perfectly reasonable, fine people that you wouldn't even mind staying associated with in one fashion or another, but aren't the tribe you're looking for. I can name a couple of kindreds in my area that they're great people. I like them. I would never join their tribe for my own reasons, because they're not doing what I want to do as far as the tribe goes. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not a big monolith, and there are going to be different opinions, different ways of doing things, but you need to know that going in so that you don't end up getting disappointed.
Absolutely. And you do have to, when you're looking for a group, it can't be... So, we've talked about it on the show before. There's an issue, especially with American heathenry, where there's a fetish for individualism. And when you look for a group, it can't be about what you want, what is best for you. You also have to take into account that group dynamic and realize that if you're joining a group, you have to be what's best for the group. And you may not, if you're a single dude who has no aspirations of family and is just out to have a good time, you may not want to join the group that's just a bunch of families with their kids. You may not be the best thing for them.
And one of my friends puts it very well. Joining a kindred is not unlike getting married. I mean, when you oath into a kindred, the commitment you are making is that serious, in my opinion. And you wouldn't, well, a normal, sane person wouldn't just settle and marry someone because they're available, because that usually leads to about a divorce 2 years later.
Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I'm not saying that from experience or anything, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very huge commitment, and you can find a group that you hang out with, and you don't necessarily even have to join, but it's still good to hang out.
Well, absolutely, and I think that, we always talk about building community, being part of community, and typically when we talk about that, we're talking about being part of a heathen community. Not everyone in your heathen community is going to be a member of your tribe, and sometimes that's because you've made the effort to hang out with heathens who aren't members of your tribe and won't be members of your tribe. I know of 2 women here locally and an entire tribe here locally that are in my community, and yet we're not going to be tribally related in that way, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, well, we've got Cascadia Moot coming up, and there's going to be a lot of heathens gathering at that would not be in each other's tribes. I mean, for various reasons. I mean, how I pointed out there being kindreds of absolutely wonderful people here who I wouldn't be in a tribe with, and some of them will be there. And no, I won't point them out to you. But, you know, they're still great people, and I enjoy their company, and I think they're good heathens. It's just, you know, there's a difference in their goals as a tribe and mine.
What do you think, Lauren?
I think that's absolutely right. And that's something that, you know, I think all of us are going to run into on both ends. But I don't think that just speaking to the newcomer to Heathenry, definitely take your time. Don't jump into something and, you know, all of a sudden be joining a kindred 5 minutes after you met them. That's a big flashing warning sign that you probably shouldn't handle or shouldn't do. Yeah, don't.
And you got to consider, if you're joining a group, it's kind of like a marriage. Leaving it is going to hurt. Not just you, but the whole group is going to be, there's going to be hurt feelings.
Well, and you have to understand what is meant by joining when you're dealing with a group that you're just meeting. You know, I would say that what I would call a worthy tribe is going to have, you know, standards for that sort of thing. Usually they're going to have at least something approximating an introductory period. You've heard us use the word thrall before in reference to the Theodish tribes, and a lot of non-Theodish tribes will use that word as well. But there are a lot of other groups out there that have much looser, egalitarian, I guess, for lack of a better word, conglomerations. They're less a tribe, even if they use the word, or not even so much a kindred as they are just a group of heathens that gets together and does their thing. And you need to understand whether or not that's one of the groups you're talking to, because membership might have a much different meaning to them than it does to you.
And like any good relationship, it's going to require a lot of communication, a lot of discussion.
Well, and that brings us to kind of a sub point we were going to talk about. For instance, in my group, we have vastly different views on everything from politics to the way you should interpret a particular event in history. And yet, because we have the same view on what it means to be a member of the group, we set those very divisive differences aside to make sure that we are there for one another.
Right.
And that's an important part of being in a group that I think really needs to be reiterated to not just new heathens, just heathens in general. You're not going to agree with everybody on everything. That doesn't mean you can't be great friends or even kindred members.
Exactly.
But it's also okay to have certain lines in the sand where you're not going to go join a group that promotes certain ideas. Don't think that you can't. There's a balance. In my particular kindred, we would never allow someone who had what I consider negative views on LBGT issues, for instance. Just that's a deal breaker for us. Doesn't mean it has to be a deal breaker for every kindred. And if I were looking to join a kindred, that would be a deal breaker for me. But then again, you know, it's going to be different for every group. You have to find the place you fit and be willing to take the time to find the place you fit.
So we're talking a lot about you know, people finding the group they fit with and all that kind of stuff. But we haven't talked about how you figure that out. You know, how do you figure out what kind of a group you're even looking for, and what really is the definition of a good group?
See, and that particular thing is going to vary so differently, not only based on your personality, your temperament, and your non-heathen views, but also based on how long you've been a heathen and what you can handle in an interpersonal relationship. Like, there's no easy formula. There's no one weird trick to finding a heathen group. You really have to get out there and get to know people and develop yourself and not make any commitments until you are sure you're ready.
Now, I will say that there are things that you can look out for as far as to see what a healthy group is. And those are things like, is this group meeting consistently? Are they getting together? Are they, what is their reputation in the community? Is it, what are the relationships like between the members? Do people genuinely enjoy each other's company? Are things kind of weird and tense? And to me that's important. Does the community get stronger over time? And are they inclusive of everyone who is in the group? Now, people obviously are not going to be. I don't expect any group to be inclusive of outsiders, but do they do things that do they leave certain members out? Do they do that kind of stuff? Those could be some kind of warning signs of an unhealthy group dynamic.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I can point to a group not too far south of me, to be honest with you, that went through a period where the chieftain had to realize that about his own group, that they had a much too open membership for a while and had gotten some people in that that he was not comfortable with, that were not good for their group, and he suddenly realized that he was trying to figure out how to arrange events without telling certain members of his own tribe that it was happening. And that's when he realized there was a problem within his tribe, and he's corrected that problem. But that's something you have to be on the lookout for. Sorry, I had two trains going at the same time, and one of them hit the other and derailed. It was terrible. Bodies everywhere.
I would just say that definitely you want to look for those red flags, though, within groups. Is there a point in the group where it's really culty? I mean, I've never seen it happen with heathen groups as much as I have with general neo-pagan groups, but that can happen.
Brian is love.
Really?
Yep. I went there.
We even have some White Marsh in the chat.
I hear there's going to be T-shirts.
I do want to point out that what looks culty to an outsider can actually be a healthy heathen dynamic.
I'm speaking more in terms of cut you off from everyone outside and make you give them all their money, that kind of stuff.
Well, if you see any of that going, you should run.
I'm talking like L. Ron Hubbard level of culty.
If you see any Scientologist heathens, let us know. We'd like to interview them.
And make fun of them.
So, other than being able to pick out what makes a good group or what you're looking for in a group, what about group hunting is so daunting for many?
Well, I mean, we can go there, but I think you're kind of selling this topic short a little bit. I think there's still more to be explored here. I mean, we haven't even talked about how a person figures out what they're looking for in a group. And I mean, yes, the answers are going to be varied for the individual, but there are certain, universal concepts for how a person figures that out. Because the fact of the matter is, there's two things that are going to help you, that you're going to have to realize when you're looking for a group. The big thing is that the group is not there to conform to you. And that's important for you to know from the very beginning.
Thorin, you need to sit up. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Fuck me for relaxing, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
No
I was like,
thanks.
what I was trying to say there is that the first thing you need to know is the group is not going to conform to you, and it's not there to conform to you. Your job when you join a group is to conform to the group, to take on the norms of the group, which is one of the reasons why it is so important that know what you're looking for when you go into a group, know whether a group is going to be good for you. As a new heathen, that group is going to be your primary source of learning. Not that you'll be expected to, abandon other ways of learning. You should always be going out there trying to figure things out and trying to learn things, but each group is going to have their way of doing things. They're going to have areas where there may be conflicting evidence on how things were done or what was practiced in the past or whatnot that they have come to their own consensus on. One primary example will be Ragnarok. How many times has it been discussed in the show that about whether or not people believe that Ragnarok is even a legitimate part of the mythos? I, for one, don't believe it is. And Ragnarok holds no place in my tribal thew. But there are going to be tribes that believe much differently about it. So you need to understand that this is the kind of thing that you're going to have to conform to with the group, or find a group that already believes similar things. And another thing that you should be thinking about when you're looking for a group is reputation. That's going to be the kind of thing that helps you find a good group. Is finding individuals from the group or groups themselves that have good reputations that are spread, that people have heard of these groups. So I've been talking for a long time. I'm sure that Josh or Lauren has something to say on this.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I think it's a very important point to make, that the group is not going to conform to you. You are going to have to conform to the group. And that being said, I think that sitting down and maybe, making a list of what are your, because there may be something you believe very strongly, and there may be things that you don't really care about. The whole Ragnarok thing, personally don't really care. It's not something that ever really comes up for me, so it's not something I have my opinions, but it's not something that I'm just like, grr, I'm right and you're wrong, which I know is so weird for a heathen. But I think it is a good thing to sit down and write down, what are your, and not just on beliefs, but commitment level. How, do you want a group that gets together twice a week and sometimes, 4 times on Sunday, or do you want a group that only gets together 4 or 5 times a year or once a month? I mean, I think the commitment level is another thing that you have to look at as well. Because if you are not someone who wants to it can work either way. If you're somebody who wants to get together all the time and they only get together every other month, you're not going to be happy with your experience, and that in turn is going to, not work out for everybody. Same way, if you can't commit to, multiple times a week and they get together multiple times a week, you're not going to be fulfilling your commitments like you should.
Absolutely.
And there's other things, like I said, the family versus, single, or, I think there's a lot of things that you're just going to have to sit down and say, okay, for me, it can come down to kind of like when I was looking for, someone to date, and I made a list of, what were my deal breakers? What were things that absolutely had to be there? And then I went from there because, and with that list, and I ended up in a much happier relationship because of it.
Thorin, you were saying something.
No, I was, and then Lauren said it for me, so I should have just kept my mouth shut until she actually finished her thoughts.
That's not how we do things on Heathen Talk.
I know it's not. I tried to break in, and she won the contest that time by refusing to bend to my interruptions. Bravo, yeah. Lauren.
Yeah.
You won that contest. Next time!
I have booze. I'm fortified.
See, this is what happens when Lauren
just won the Constitution.
Again.
Yeah. But I think that's to me, that's super important. And that, because, I'll reiterate this, and being in a kindred is like being married to them. It's in being a huge, messy, but amazing group marriage without the sex. And so it's
That got
definitely...
weird.
Yeah, well, I had to clarify, because people might be expecting something that ain't there.
Hey, you know what? Again, it depends on tribal Thu.
Exactly. But I would argue that you shouldn't go in expecting that to be the norm in tribal Thu.
Probably not. I haven't heard of it so far.
No. But I think that it's very, the level of commitment that you're going to need to have to that group if you decide to fully join. And here's the other thing. You don't have to fully join a group either. I just want to put that out there. We have a lot of people that come to our events who, we call friends of. They're heathen. We like them. Some of them are members of other kindreds. Some of them just, we haven't decided to add, there hasn't been a point where there's been a kind of a hand put out there to say, hey, would you like to join? And some of them, or we just don't want to ask.
Even then, like with my group, I hung out for over a year before I was asked to join. And it wasn't just hanging out that got me in. I had to do something. It wasn't even like they told me I had to do something. I just did something like, okay, well, he's obviously willing to put in work for us, so he's worth himself, as it were.
And so I got a question here from Heathenry. So what do you feel is the best way to meet new heathens? Large open events, one-on-one, small, more personal events, or another way? My answer to that is yes.
All of the above.
Yes.
Come to Cascadia. I don't know where you live, but you should come to Cascadia.
Absolutely. You'll definitely find heathens there.
I mean, I've had just as much luck going to like large events as I had from pub moots or randomly meeting another heathen in one of, like, I'm not even kidding, my macroeconomics class semester, a girl that sits next to me, heathen. Kind of a baby heathen, but it was really kind of exciting to, just randomly meet someone.
I met a heathen, she's actually become a good friend of mine. We just went out for coffee. She found a blog of mine and shot me a message on Facebook and was like, hey, can we meet up for coffee? So we met up for coffee. I mean, just put yourself out there and meet people.
I think just about every time on Reddit that I mention I'm from Seattle, I have some local heathen that private messages me asking me if I want to go grab a beer sometimes, which is awesome for those of you listening out there. If you're in my area, absolutely send me a message if you want to, actually meet in person and talk. That's totally cool with me. I like beer and people.
And I mean, also, I will give this caveat because I feel like if I don't, if you're going to meet up with someone for the first time or even a second time, do it in a public place, preferably a bar or coffee shop, somewhere that if things go horribly wrong, you can, there are witnesses and you can exit quickly. Also, let somebody know where you're going and call them or text them and let them know you're okay. Just, I hate to say common sense safety, but I don't want somebody to go out and do something stupid and blame us. So I've given my caveat. I feel better now.
So I want to derail us for a second here, because someone just popped up in the chat room, and his connection to our show is notoriously spotty. So I want to answer his question, since I'm pretty sure he's listening.
Hi, Marcel.
What's up, Marcel?
Hey.
So Marcel asked this on the subreddit, and for the rest of you listening, if you have questions before the show, ask them on the subreddit, ask them on Facebook. We'll take note of them. We listen. He says, as heathens, we always say that heathenry is not for everyone. But what does that mean? What does make someone capable both mentally and physically in order to become a heathen? I wasn't born in a heathen mindset, and I work each day to create in my mind so why some people simply can't be heathen. Thorin, I know you have an answer for that one. Lauren, I don't know if you saw that in the chat room.
Yeah, I have an answer for that one too. So
I think we all have answers.
Thorin, go ahead.
Well, first of all, let me offer one small thought to the subject we were on before, just because I think it's something important to say, and then we can leave it alone, is when you are trying to meet area heathens and you send them messages and stuff like that, and you're trying to get that face-to-face heathenry, a bad first question is, when's your next ritual? because a lot of tribes are not going to be comfortable with outsiders at their rituals. So try to find some other way of meeting them. Okay, moving on from that to Marcel's question. I think what you need to understand is that when we're talking about how not everyone can be a heathen, it's not saying that it's not like saying, well, that person over there can't be a heathen. It's not a value judgment. It's not any sort of objective comment on the person themselves. Saying that not everyone can be a heathen just means that not everyone is going to be willing or even desire to make the kind of changes in their thought patterns, thought process, or in their life that are required of a heathen. And this isn't a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. You know, some people are suited to be heathens. Some people are suited to be Catholics. Or some people aren't suited for religion at all and are better off being atheists, and that's a perfectly reasonable thing. So when you're talking about that not everybody can be a heathen, it just means that not everybody is prepared to make the changes that they need to make to become a heathen, and they'd be better off not being heathens.
Lauren, go ahead.
I'm going to have to agree with you, but I think the fact of the matter is, embracing any kind of religious belief that runs counter to the overculture is hard work. It's a commitment. It's not always going to be easy. And quite frankly, not everyone is up for shifting that radical worldview. I mean, you see that enough in heathenry, where there are plenty of heathens that still desperately cling on to particularly Christian baggage. And so to me, not everyone, I don't know if not everyone can be heathen is more appropriate than I would say not everyone should be heathen. Because some people, it's simply not the right path for somebody who doesn't do well with who wants to fit in and wants to be, just like everyone else, and is more concerned with the status symbols than being concerned with, your family. We are a very individualistic society, and a lot of people don't want to give that up. A lot of people need to feel special, and I get that. It's something that I have struggled with myself, but the fact of the matter is, if you're not willing to give up a lot and do a lot of work and learn and change your whole life, the way you perceive everything, then being heathen or being basically any part of any minority religious group that doesn't have a real strong centralized structure or anything like that, doesn't have people telling you, doesn't have a pope or whatever telling you what to do, is probably not for you.
So I completely agree with my two co-hosts here, and I want to get to a question Marcel asked in the chat that the chat answered fairly accurately, but he also added, is it just a fact that some people are born with the mindset to be heathen, or at a biological level? And the answer is no. No one is really born with that mindset to be heathen. You build it. You have to build it.
Unless you happen to be one of the very, very small percentage of second-generation heathens that are starting to pop up.
I'd even say they're not born with the mindset.
Yeah, no, they're not born with the mindset either. But they
just have a head start on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about how it's life experiences. If your life experiences, both from the way you were raised and the way you've lived your adult life or whatever, have led you down the path of being firmly evangelical Christian, you're not likely to desire to or have the ability to change your mindset, your worldview in the ways that are required of a heathen.
Well, and you see it all the time and this is actually a great question for the N00Bcast, because we see new heathens come into the subreddit or onto Facebook groups all the time, and they immediately start asking questions that are outside of a heathen worldview.
Absolutely.
And when they're told, whether politely or not, and some of us are better at polite than others, that they need to slow down and take a step back and actually attempt to develop a heathen worldview, they run away. They balk and they don't want to be a part of it because it's uncomfortable. It's hard to strip away the layers that you have built over 16 to 30 years of growing up Christian.
Yeah, this isn't repainting the house. This is buying a new house.
This is building a new house.
Building a new house. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that approaching, to circle back to an earlier topic just a little bit, is I mentioned that when you join a group that you need to change for the group and conform to the group's sense of the normative, the group's thews, and the group's worldview. And that's just a microcosm of heathenry as a whole. Heathenry is not here for you to change to suit you. It's not a religion of the feels. What feels right oftentimes doesn't matter one teensy-tiny little bit. There are certain facts to heathenry, and there are certain things that are and are not heathen. And your feelings going into it don't matter. And if you find that your feelings and the facts of heathenry don't match, and you're really attached to those feelings, then that's one of those places where heathenry is just not for you. Not a good thing, not a bad thing. It's just a thing.
Well, and that's where, and this is something that comes up with new heathens all the time as well, is this is where you get to the true definition of a universalist religion where people are wanting to convert you. This is where it is not for everyone, because sometimes it's best for you just not to make the choice to be a heathen. It's not about saving you from Christianity. It's about changing who you are at a fundamental level.
Right, and heathenry doesn't care if you're a heathen. Other heathens, for the most part, don't care if you're a heathen. They just care that you're not a dick.
Well, they care that you're not being a dick to them.
Fair point.
I care if you're a heathen or not, in the sense that if you're misrepresenting heathenry, I care. But, at the end of the day, I don't go out trying to convert anyone. We actually, oddly enough, had this conversation. My kindred and I actually had this conversation over dinner Sunday night, and one of the things we talked about, heathenry to me is a religion of attraction. Someone should want to be heathen because they see what it is and they want what these heathen people have, not because someone tried to convert them to heathenry.
So, Marcel, I hope we answered your questions and the rabbit trails they brought us down.
And
We're
as
always
always,
welcome to ask for more.
Yeah, and as always, if we didn't quite get there for you, ask us either in the IRC to talk to you on the show, or just send us a message and we will try to clarify it even more.
So, we do have another question from the subreddit that I think is an important one. What about minors? Specifically, if you're a minor looking for a group, what are some of the pitfalls you're going to come across, and what role do minors play in groups?
I'm going to say this from a purely legal perspective background when it comes to religious groups. My particular group, we don't accept minors that aren't accompanied by their parents, and that's just because none of us particularly feel like being lynched. So there you go. And a very religious area. I've seen it happen with Wiccan groups and general pagan groups where kids will go to a pagan pride day and parents will find out and they'll go absolute batshit crazy, and the cops show up and it gets ugly. So for me, it definitely has to do with if you want to come, that's great. You need a parent or guardian. Sorry, and that's more because that's what. At the end of the day, I have to look at my group and what's best for my group before I look at what's best for you. Sorry.
Well, so
absolutely, yeah.
There's also another dynamic here where a comparison to Christianity is perfectly apt. We don't have large churches with dedicated youth programs where you can disappear into a crowd of 30 kids and be safe in numbers. As a minor, you are coming into a stranger's home or going to a park with a group of strangers, and that's not fair to your parents, and it's not, especially if it's your first time meeting them, it's not necessarily safe for you. You don't know these people.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say, I have had at this point, I think, 3 minors that have contacted me about, meeting me or meeting my tribe and talking about it. My answer's always been the same. Absolutely, that sounds great. Have your parents talk to me, and we can find a time that we can all meet. Because I'm simply not going to meet you without your parents there. And that is for more than just reasons of legality, though that certainly falls into it. In Lauren's area, she's worried about being lynched. In my area, I'm worried about being sued. And I think that would be just as bad for me as getting lynched in this area. But that's certainly a huge consideration. But there's also the consideration of they're your parents. Have some respect. You are under their roof tree, and it's important that they be involved in these sorts of choices. Not saying that they can necessarily dictate to you what your religion is, but they certainly, at least in my eyes, can dictate certain actions that you take.
Well, and when you're talking about going and meeting a group or joining a group, you are by default part of your family's inner yard. And when you are joining a group, you are becoming part of another group's inner yard, so you're inviting strangers in. And your parents need to know these people.
Absolutely. I mean, there are definitely some. I don't know any of them personally, but I'm absolutely certain, just from the odds of it, that there's families around here that would not want me at their table. And I would expect that any member of my tribe could have me at their table. So that's important.
So, in a group, then, say your group has minors, what is the role of a minor?
In general, to be a kid. I mean, if they want to participate in Stumble, they're welcome. If they don't have to with Bloat. Usually we don't invite them to Stumble, but Bloat. I have been at wonderful bloats especially where younger people have served as horn bearers, in kindreds that are much larger than can actually have children's programs. You've got that kind of thing. Basically, I think that's another very individualistic thing, depending on how many kids do you have, what are their interest level, because as much as I enjoy the kids that are affiliated with my kindred, half the time they're young and they would much rather go play on their iPad than participate in Bloat. And I can't blame them, because when I was 5, I would probably have thought the same thing.
Well, so my group has children in it, and they range from, I think, 11 to 17. And I'm only saying 17 because that's the cutoff. After you turn 18, you're an adult now. And those kids, for the most part, the young girls help in Stumble, and they help carry the horn. And then every year for Easter, the children actually do ritual, and it is our way to get them involved and to be part of it.
So, for my part here, I've got to start to make a distinction. When you're talking about what their role is in the tribe, I don't think minor is a useful distinction anymore. Minor is a legal term. Minors are people under 18. At this point, you have to start talking about the tribe's view and the tribal thew on who is a child and who is an adult. And I certainly can say that I know tribes that have ways of them determining adulthood versus the legal determination of adulthood, and it's usually not waiting until you're 18. And once the tribe considers you an adult, well, your role is no different than any other adult in your tribe, and it's going to be based on your place within that tribe, your level of knowledge and expertise, experience, and ability. But before you're considered an adult, your role is to learn. and your role is to get to that point and to become an adult. And there may come my tribe doesn't have any ritual thu when it comes to ritual roles for children or anything like that because we have no children. But hard to form thu when there's nothing to form thu around. But I can stop there though and say that your role as a child is to learn.
Well, and Lauren mentioned to be a child, right? And it got mentioned in the chat, and you didn't bring it up, so they're all severely disappointed in you. But your Yule event was a perfect example of children they're fulfilling their role as children.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
At the Heathen event,
Sorry for not bringing it up. Whoever mentioned it in the chat, I'm not really following it because this chat client hurts my eyes. And I would have to actually be paying solid attention to it to differentiate people's comments. So I'm not trying. But yeah, I mean, so we had a number of kids there. I think there were 3 kids there, and they were all definitely children. They were very young. They have not reached the point where they're even thinking about the idea of rites of passage or becoming adults. And they did exactly that. They were kids. They ran around. They played. They had a good time. They were respectful of the adults. They were very respectful of ritual, and they are welcome back anytime.
So, Lauren, do you want to ask this question we got here?
Sure. If a couple joins a tribe and later have children, is there a system for the children to become part of the tribe? Example, man-making ceremonies some tribes have. Or are they born into the tribe as a member with all the rites accompanying it? That's going to be a tribal feud thing. For me, for us, for my particular group, no, they are not a member because we firmly believe that they should be able to make that choice as to what they're going to believe when they are adults, when they have left childhood. That means they don't get the right to vote. It doesn't mean there's certain rights that only tribe members have. It also means that if there's adult things, they don't get to come. But the flip side being, we kind of have what we call the heathen adjacent rule in our tribe, which is spouses, children, immediate family members are always welcome. So you're always welcome to bring your child, bring your spouse, even if they're not heathen.
In my group, children are considered part of the group. You might say they're considered members, but they don't have voting rights. They don't get to make decisions as part of the group. But when they turn 18, and that's just the benchmark my group uses, they could be asked to join. And we have our own little Mjolnir we give out, and if you're asked to join, you receive a Mjolnir, and you take the oath. Thorin, what the hell?
Well, we're talking about kids.
You were definitely acting your age.
For those of you listening at home, Thorin is wearing a red nose, like a clown nose.
Anyway,
it's the sort of thing kids like, isn't it?
No, clowns are creepy. Make it go away.
You guys are boring.
Anyway, so there is that once they've reached adulthood, they are asked to oath into the group and become full members, at which point they can vote. They get a say in what we do and how we do things. But until then, they're just learning what it means to be part of the group.
See, I'm going to say that this is definitely a tribal thu issue. I mean, I know some tribes that have, the roof tree rule, as it were. I think we've had Brian Smith on here has mentioned something similar to it anyway, where, somebody joins the tribe and their spouse who's not necessarily heathen is still considered a part of the tribe. I'm not going to speak for how Brian's tribe, he mentioned that in passing, so I'm not going to speak exactly how that works in his tribe.
That's pretty much how our tribe is run.
Right. I would imagine a lot of it depends on, how the tribe wants to deal with that, how the individuals want to deal with that. I mean, I'm certain that as far as, there are going to be some kids that don't want to be considered part of the tribe. And maybe they're just considered children of the tribe. I would have to say, if I were to, make a guess on how tribal Thu will develop with my tribe, as children become an issue, is that they'll be considered part of the tribe, but they're children that are part of the tribe. Their role is to grow into adults, and perhaps once they're an adult, they'll have that choice to make. But I don't think kids can really properly make that choice.
No. I mean, I one thing that I wish my parents had not let me do was become Christian and be baptized at like 5 years old, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Well,
I was doing it because all of my friends were doing it.
I said 5 is the first time I was baptized.
So
I've been dunked multiple times.
I've only been dunked once, but I think I accepted Jesus like 6 times. It just never stuck, I guess.
yeah, I can.
Well, if the Free Methodists say you're a Christian, that doesn't necessarily mean the Baptists agree. And
God
then
forbid the non-denominationals get in on it. Okay.
Well, see, here's the
don't
thing
bring
is-
the Catholics up.
Here's the thing, though, that it all has to do with your belief on immersion versus sprinkle. And anyway, back to actual heathen. There is one more thing I wanted us to hit on topic-wise on this, and that is, let's talk about. Okay, so you're in an area, and there's nobody left. You haven't found a group that you gel with, so you're wanting to start your own study group or group. So I kind of want to talk about like that process, because that's another question that I get a lot. Attracting people, how do you do it? What do you do? My suggestion is always start a study group. 1, it helps you kind of suss out who knows what. 2, it allows you to learn things. And 3, people who really aren't that committed tend to drop out when you start making them read things.
Yeah, I've never started a group, so I don't know.
So, can you repeat that question one more time real quick for me?
Advice on starting groups. What's the best way to start a group? As far as what makes a good group? How should you do it? Just starting out. I'm not talking about. And I'm talking about more informal things, not starting a kindred, but starting a study group or starting a meetup, that kind of stuff.
Oh, well, I mean, with that, you should make sure that there's somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about involved. I have found so many of those informal type of groups that show up and they fashion themselves as regular pub moots or study groups or different things like that were started by somebody who had been a heathen for 6 months and invited a bunch of people who had been heathens for 6 months or a year, and none of them had a damn clue what they were talking about. And I show up, and it's absolutely ridiculous, the things that are coming out of their mouths. And the problem is, by this point, because they were started by these people who had absolutely no idea what they were talking about, but have been going for a while, they were pretty invested in not knowing what the fuck they were talking about. So no amount of actual knowledge on the subject was going to sway them in the opinions that they had been echoing at each other for a year or more.
Now, I have to disagree with you somewhat on that, because I think that if you don't know what you're doing and you're willing to say, I don't know what I'm doing, and you're with other people that are willing to say, hey, I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing, and you find reliable things to study from, such as, I'll plug We Are Deeds, because I think that's a great place to start. I think that it's perfectly acceptable to not know what you're doing as long as you go into it with the attitude of, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, I think it's somewhere at the beginning of that process you still need to have somebody who knows what they're doing.
But that's not always possible.
Well, hear me out for a second here. I'm not necessarily talking about somebody who can be physically present. But I'm going to throw out an example for you. How many groups of people who've been a heathen for 6 months to a year do you think could handle starting a study group based on the Havamal and actually come up with any decent results out of it?
Yeah, that's why I didn't say the Havamal. That's why I said something like We Are Our Deeds or Practical Heathen's Guide to Asatru. Not,
right.
Baby steps.
Very baby steps. But that's what I'm getting at, is that you need to have, and in this case, we're acting as those people that know what we're talking about. We're saying, don't start with the Havamal, don't start with the sagas, start with the Practical Heathen's Guide, start with We Are Deeds or whatever, and move on from there. You need to have actual human resources to help you figure this shit out. Because if you go looking for, what are good texts to study on heathenry, you're going to get everything from We Are Deeds to Culture of the Teutons, and you're going to get a huge number of people shouting sagas and eddas at you. And, well, as we were just kind of talking about, the sagas and the eddas are a terrible place for you to start, because you simply aren't equipped to understand them yet when you're new. So that's what I mean. And ideally, you're going to find somebody who's willing to put in that time, who knows what they're talking about, to show up and meet space with you and help you. Not necessarily to lead you, but at least to help you and be that person you can look to. And for all you experienced heathens out there that are listening to me flap my lips at you right now, be that person. When you have a group of newbies that are looking for guidance of this sort, don't turn them down because you don't want to go to a group full of newbies. If you have the time, do it. You can only help heathenry. And
I'm going to throw it out there. If Toby can do it, you can do it.
And Toby has done it. Toby has gone to some absolutely objectionable groups to help turn them into less objectionable groups. And he's our hero for it. And for the rest of you out there, I mean, yeah, you're going to look at that and you're just going to want to drop your head into your hands. But if you say no when you have the time and resources to do it, then I blame you for all the crap that's out there about heathenry. It will become your fault. Think about that.
So,
and that's where finding like a good regional heathen group comes in, comes into play.
On that note, our favorite gamer geek girl wants us to talk about altars, and apparently there's not a lot of information out there about them. It's really hard to find. I'm going to suggest a blog post that we have on Heathen Talk. I believe it's titled "The Potted Vey Part 2."
Yeah.
I'm going to toot my own horn. There's an N on the end of that word. That is something you should read. Altars are tricky, and in all honesty, until you have had the experience to put together some form of house cult, I'd suggest sticking with a simple ancestor altar and putting pictures of your family that has passed on it and mementos from those people and leaving offerings to them there.
I can't say anything bad about that. I have my house cult altar. There are no pictures on it, but there are things on it that have to do with my family, those that have passed. House cult's weird. Things change. That's one of the few places where your fields have at least a little bit of input. But Lauren?
I that's pretty much where I have two in my house. I have one that is to my ancestors, and it has pictures. It has also just other things that were important to my recent ancestors. And then I also have one for my house whites, mainly because I try to keep a good relationship with them, because for those of you who've heard me talking ad nauseum about them, I bought a house based partially on the fact that the house whites seemed happy here, as opposed to a lot of other houses I looked up at this town. So I do have a house white altar as well, kind of a, and that's just part of my house cult. But yeah, for mostly, I do have that. And if it was not quite so dark in here, I'd actually show you because it's right behind me. But I've got pictures and other things. I even have some things that are kind of Christian on that altar, but they were things that were important to my grandparents and my great-grandparents.
So, I know that doesn't quite answer your question, but that's really the best we can give you in the podcast format. Unfortunately, I don't know of any books or anything that would be a guide on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there are any real, and you kind of got to get into the, what are you talking about when you say altar type of concept? Are you talking about, a little thing in your home, or are you talking about, the main place where you do your sacrifice and ritual, outdoors or whatever? There's a lot to get into there, and this particular podcast might not be the place for it right now.
And vase don't go in a pot. I'm just
Vase
throwing
do
it
not
out there.
go in a pot. Yes.
Now, I will say that if I could ever find like a really nice piece of fieldstone, I would love to build something outside for our particular sacrifices, but still trying to find one that doesn't cost me an arm and a leg.
One of these days I'm going to go up into the mountains and find a nice big flat piece of stone that's nice and porous so it'll suck up the blood well.
Yeah. You can find a good piece of limestone.
Yeah.
There is a question that got brought up in the IRC as a joke, but it's one that has annoyed the hell out of everybody on the podcast. Am I going to Valhalla?
No.
Probably not, if you're lucky.
I don't know, guys. I've been fighting obesity for a couple of years now.
Josh,
Josh, shut up.
You've already got, 2 penalty drinks coming to you, Cascadium. Do you want to make it 3?
I'm the only one who has the power to assign myself a penalty drink.
Here's the thing. Somebody asked the other day that they were actually legitimately concerned because they are in the military and are going overseas in a potential situation where they could get killed. And the fact of the matter is, as long as you're not being buried in a mass grave in wherever it is that you're going off to fight, you can totally come home and join your ancestral mound.
Yeah. And yes, opinions are going to vary on this, but the history tells us that Valhalla was never meant to be seen so much as a legitimate afterlife as it is a metaphor for the mass grave of war for those who don't return home, for those who cannot be returned to their ancestral mound. That's when I shared that meme on the Heathen Talk Facebook page of the black crosses in the field. That's what I was getting at. That particular, the black crosses in that field, that's a spot in France where German soldiers fell in battle and were not returned home. They were buried in France, and they were honored as fallen soldiers, but the crosses were black because they were the Germans.
Well, and you have to also take into account that that's particularly apt because unlike the French who fell in that battle, those German soldiers were denied individual graves.
They were.
So that is the mass grave of a battlefield.
Yeah, those markers are not where the people are. Those markers are merely a memorial of who is there in that field somewhere.
And personally, I always saw Valhalla as a consolation prize. Because the ideal is to be with your family, to be in that family mound, to become part of the, your family, your DC and your Alfar. That's the goal. That's the what you want, and the rest is just kind of, well, this is what happens if you can't. Sorry.
Yeah, and honestly, no matter how complex your views are on the nature of the soul and the afterlife, Valhalla really isn't a prize.
I do also want to take a moment, and there's been a trend recently of people claiming, I am fighting a horrible disease, or I'm battling depression, or all of these things, and that somehow makes them worthy of the mythological version of Valhalla. And I want to point out that those are tough things to fight. If you're fighting cancer, that's rough. But that doesn't make you a warrior. And you can't just define yourself as something without actually being it. Otherwise, you just dilute the meaning of it. So I'm not a warrior by any means, but I'm going to protect that title, and I'm going to tell you you're not.
And honestly, don't let 1,000 years of linguistic change muddy a concept for you. You know, we use phrases nowadays like fighting cancer, but, you know, that's not the way that word was ever used in antiquity. So just kind of disabuse yourselves of that and don't let modern idioms inform your view of theology.
That's not to diminish the struggle you have ahead of you.
No, absolutely not. It's a hell of a struggle, you know, and that's the reason that modern idioms use terms like fight and battle and so on and so forth, because, you know, you are in a tough spot and you're doing everything you can to get out of it, and other people are there with you helping you do everything you can to get out of it, you know, the doctors and whatnot. But, you know, and it sucks, and I feel for you, and I wouldn't ever want to have to be in that position. But don't let modern idioms inform your theology.
Let me just lay it out here for you as someone who's actually going through this. You know, I'm going blind. I have an autoimmune disorder. My body is attacking my eyes. I have to take chemotherapy. It sucks. It sucks so much because my weekends are pretty much dead. I pretty much sleep all weekend. But I'm not a warrior. I'm also not inspirational, but that's a different rant for a different day. Because that's something that I find, yeah, that's a whole other story. But anyway, you know, guys, I don't want to demean what the people who are actually warriors do. And yeah, it sucks. Yes, it's hard, but it's not the same in the same sense that I would never want to say, oh, well, you know, my disease isn't at least at this point life-threatening. So to have someone, you know, turn around, you know, one of my kindred members' mothers has lymphoma, and, you know, I couldn't even, you know, I wouldn't want to try to say, oh, well, I'm like a cancer survivor or someone with cancer, because I'm not. It's, you know, it's words have meanings, and words especially have meanings within this particular religion that we have to remember.
Absolutely.
So, one more question we got here?
It's a good last question.
Oh, it's great.
It's
It's
a
great.
great last question. Well, Josh, you've been asking them.
I will ask this one. This comes from Rick Stevenson, and for those of you who don't know him, you should go give him trouble in his Facebook group, Heathenry, and tell him that the Heathen Talk staff sent you. It'll make you best of friends.
Absolutely.
Why is it considered poor form to call other heathens brother or sister?
Lauren, do you want to start on that one?
Oh, boy. Well, first of all, let's go back to what I just said. Words mean things. Mm-hmm. I have a brother. His name is James. He designed our logo. Unless you are him, you are not my brother. I grew up in an incredibly heavily evangelical background where you do call everyone brothers and sisters because it's prescribed within the New Testament that you are brothers and sisters in Christ. And to me, when you come in and you call me your sister or your brother, which is even more annoying, because, you know, there are heathens who are girls, and some people don't get that. First of all, you're creating a false sense of kinship with me that doesn't exist, number one. Number two, you are trying to, whether you think about like it or not, you are, in a way, that is a form of emotional manipulation. Oh, look, we're both heathen and we're brothers and sisters, so you have to help me. No, I don't. And most important, you know, there's that Christian baggage, but most importantly, you know, I'm fine with calling those who are, I'm oath in my kindred, my family, my kin, my brothers and sisters, because it means something, and it's so important, and I'm committed to those people. But, you know, as much as Thorin and Josh are my friends, and they are part of what I call the middle circle, which I'm working on a whole essay on that, you know, you're not my brother, you're not my kin, and I'm not going to, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to help you bury a body.
So, yeah. I agree with everything Lauren said. These words have meaning. They have really important meanings to heathens. How many times have we gone on about how family is everything? And unless you are a person that, you know, is actually my brother or sister, then you are not my family. There are a small number of individuals who have become kin to me, and they have that right. You don't. Here's the thing. This trend of using the terms brother and sister, as Lauren pointed out, is a very Christian thing. And it's a Christian thing for a reason. It's one of the ways that the early church tried to break down the concept of frith. They tried to destroy the concept of the family unit being the most important thing. We've mentioned before that the family is more important than anything. It's more important than the gods, you know? So, you know, the church had to find a way to break through that, and one of those ways to break through that was to make the church your family. So this isn't to get down on Christianity and everything. I'm just trying to explain a little bit of the origin of that. So moving on from there, we are heathens. And we are going back to that point where the church, the religion, is no longer your family. Your family is your family again. And it is more important than anything in the religion. So for you to try to usurp that role, you're trying to bring us back to a point where you're destroying frith again, whether you're doing it on purpose or not. This is getting mad at people for calling me brother is me getting mad at somebody trying to break down one of the most fundamental aspects of my religious worldview. And while I can put up with that from an ignorant person who is not of my religion, I'm not going to put up with it more than once from an ignorant person who is part of my religion. Because if you're trying to break down one of the most fundamental aspects of the religion from the inside of that religion, after you've already been told why it's not a good thing what you're doing, then I am pretty much done with you.
And you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it very, very wrong.
I think that Brian actually said something very important that ties into this on the episode he was on last. And it was in reference to using anachronistic language to communicate. And the simple fact is, Heathenry, by default, uses a lot of these older definitions for terms. And like you said, brother is something that is vastly important. For my brother, for any one of my brothers, I would go to the ends of the earth and let nothing stop me if they needed it. For a friend, I'd go a long way. For a stranger, you're lucky if I'll open the damn door.
I mean, to be clear, I would kill either one of these people for my brother.
That's not much of a challenge. I'm slow.
Yeah, but you're all the way in Arkansas.
Fair enough. Now, I will say this to tie back to something that we were talking about earlier. This is why, to me, when you oath into a kindred, it is kin to marriage. To me, while my brother is, you know, my brother, my mom, my dad, they're kind of the top tier of my, and this is my own tribal thew, but I'm right, so I'm just going to say it. There's also the sense of I am making a commitment to these people that is kin to the kind of commitment that I made when I married my husband. My husband and I are not related by blood, even though our families are both from West Bygod, Virginia. Well, I take that back that we know of. But, I made that very an oath that took him basically as like he was my blood, and the same thing is said to the people who have oathed in my kindred. I talk about Ben quite a bit. Ben to me is just he's like I would liken it to a brother-in-law. He is still my inner yard, but the choice between my brother and my brother-in-law, I choose my brother. But still, he is part of my family, and that's why I say. That's why I kind of made that analogy earlier, and people asked that question. Is exactly that, because it's these are people that you have these commitments to via either oath or blood, and it's a two-way street, and it's important. I don't want to belittle the importance of the oaths that were made and or the family or my religion.
So I think it's safe to say that the consensus opinion of the Heathen Talk cast and crew is, if you don't know me, don't bro me.
Yeah, basically. Do we have anything else on that subject?
I think we've thoroughly beaten it, bloodied it, and
Actually, I
now...
have one more point to make.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
It's tangentially related. Those of you listening to this podcast, whether tonight, a week from now, or 6 years from now, just before they take down the YouTube servers, you will note that despite our best efforts, heathens still go around broing everybody who wears a hammer. It is not because the information isn't out there, it is because stupidity never dies.
Now, I will say there is only one time that it is okay to bro someone you don't know, and that is if the words "don't tase me" are in front of it.
Very true.
Other than that, though, yeah, don't. Just don't. And you know what? It's something that's been going on since the beginning of Heathenry, and it's as long as we have people coming into Heathenry from Christianity and from a Christian overculture, there will be people who will bro you.
And, you know, if I can tie this a little bit back to a point we made earlier in the show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, when I was ranting a little bit there, I was talking about, you know, the reason that, you know, Christianity started doing it, and that's the reason it became popular, blah, 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 blah. However, it is an undeniable fact, and people have brought this up before the numerous times, especially on the internet, when somebody has said bro and people tried to correct them and people got butthurt. Well, it's just slang. It's just part of the vernacular. There are even some subcultures that it's a huge part of. Do you remember earlier when we were answering Marcel's question about how some people just shouldn't be heathens or can't be heathens?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
This is part of that, because this is one of those fundamental shifts that some people are going to have to make. You may come from a culture that, for completely non-religious reasons, calling people bro, calling people brother, calling people sister, whatever, are, you know, just regular everyday slang. Well, you know what? Too bad.
Unless you are Hulk Hogan, in which case it's okay.
Nothing Hulk Hogan does is okay.
I don't know.
He may be a shitheel, but he was my childhood hero, so you leave the Hulk alone.
I figure any man who can manage to get approval to wear a do-rag in court has got something going for him.
Hey, you know what? Macho Man's going to snap into him, so just
fair enough.
But yeah, you know, that's one of those shifts that you might have to make culturally and in your worldview when you try to become a heathen. Is, you know, you may live in a place where everybody around you, just as part of the general slang, is saying, you know, hey, what's up, bro? You know, or whatever, or calling you brother or whatnot. You need to stop. And not just in heathen circles. You should honestly stop in general. Not because there's anything generally wrong with it in an overculture sense, but because you are, in a certain essence, while you are always going to be part of the overculture, you are adjusting your personal culture into heathen culture. And this is just one of those things. Deal with it.
So it really sucks for Hawaiian heathens, is what you're saying, where everyone is called bruh.
Is that a thing in Hawaii?
It's a huge thing in Hawaii where everyone is bruh. I mean, like random stranger on the street, sup, bruh?
Fair enough.
Though, to be fair, it's bruh and not bro, so...
I grew up in Northern California where it's bra.
Yeah, well, you know, I've heard people talk about the difference between putting an A or putting an R on the end of a word. You know what? Either way, it's not okay to say.
How about if you just start going around calling everybody brazier? Hey, what's up, brazier?
Just looking for a little support here.
Oh, Josh, that was great.
So real quick, we are in the last minute of the show. If you are in Colorado within driving distance of Boulder, there is a person on Facebook. You'll note that he is also our t-shirt model. You need to shoot him a message about his group doing regular meetups. He wants to meet you. He wants to talk and get to know you and see the heathens in his area.
He's in the IRC right now, if I'm not mistaken. That's J Red C. I can't remember his real name.
That's Jack.
Jack. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So everybody show up to Jack.
And If you have other events, please, we have a event page on heathentalk.com. There's a form at the bottom. Fill them out, and we will get your event up there. If you're in Arkansas, the weekend before that, we're having Heathens in the Park picnic. So if you're interested in that, shoot me an email or find me on Facebook. Or I'm not hiding. And with that being said, thank you for joining us. We'll be here next week, and we have a fun and exciting topic for you next week, I'm sure.
As soon as we find out about it, we'll tell you.
Yeah. I don't know. Coming up, though, we will have Ladies' Night 3 coming up in May. So.
And we're also organizing the concept of doing a military heathen night.
That's right. We did decide to add a military heathen night, didn't we?
Yes.
We did. Whether or not it becomes a regular thing will remain to be seen, but we'll do it at least once.
Otherwise known as, yay, Lauren and Josh get to take a night off.
Yeah, and you know what? I've been around the military for a significant portion of my adult life, and I'm just going to say right now we might have to up the rating on that episode to mature, just to get away with the language.
Just because we do an episode doesn't mean it has to go on iTunes. We do have other options for posting it that don't ruin our rating.
Well, we just have to mark that one mature, and we're fine.
There you go.
Yeah, we're good.
Well, that said, y'all are doing it wrong.
Yeah, but you're not the boss of me.
Y'all have a great week.
Bye, everybody.